welcome back to Mr. Sans at the end of the opening remarks. Hopefully by then he'll be technically equipped to deliver his remarks. So I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 41 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Il n'y a pas de français, Madame Chabot?
No French, Miss Chabot? Inaudible.
Of the House of Commons Standing Committee. Élection est là. Okay. Thank you. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, the 26th of May, 2021, the committee will commence its consideration of Bill C-265, an act to amend the Employment Insurance Act, illness, injury, or quarantine. I'd like to welcome our witnesses and begin our discussion. To begin our discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks, followed by questions. Today we have with us Claude de Bellefeuille, le député de Salaberry-sur-Trois, Chantal Renaud, comme individu, Marie-Hélène Dubé, criminologist and founder of 15 Weeks is Not Enough campaign. Et j'espère.
And I hope that we resolve the technical problems with Mr. Louis Sans-Façon.
The Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada, we have with us Julie Kellendorfer, the Director of Government and Community Relations. For the benefit of our witnesses, I'd like to make a few additional comments. Interpretation in this video conference is available. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. Les services d'interprétation.
Interpretation services are available at the bottom of your screen. You can choose Floor, English, or French. When you speak, please speak slowly and clearly. When you don't have the floor, please put yourself on mute. We will begin with Ms. de Bellefeuille for 5 minutes, please. Welcome, Ms. de Bellefeuille. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd say that it's with some emotion that I appear before you this afternoon. Even though this is my third term, this is the first time I defend a bill before a parliamentary committee. So I feel very privileged to do that this afternoon. I want to welcome all the witnesses and salute all the members of the parliamentary committee. So today, as you will understand, I'm here mainly to convince my dear Liberal colleagues to give royal assent to my bill, C-265. Since this bill got the support of the majority of opposition parties in the House of Commons, and unfortunately, my bill cannot continue after this committee if it does not get the assent of the Liberal government. So I hope to convince you that 15 weeks is not enough and 26 weeks is not sufficient either. And I'd like to try to convince you that 50 weeks is what people need to make sure that vulnerable workers who unfortunately become sick can get special benefits for 50 weeks. This has been documented. Why are we talking about 50 weeks? Well, because various studies have proven that on average, and when we talk about an average, that means that there are people who need more than 26 weeks, some need more than 50 weeks. So some diseases require absence from works that go beyond 15 weeks or 26. Let's say you have cancer, colon cancer, for instance. On average, studies show that they need 37 weeks. If you have rectal cancer, this can go up to 48 weeks. So you will understand that the problem has been documented, and I don't understand. Citizens, Quebecers and Canadians do not understand that since there's probative evidence, why not go ahead with my bill and allow sick workers who are struggling with a serious disease to get more than 26 weeks or 15 weeks and go up to 50 weeks. We also know that the parliamentary budget officer told us we could afford this. He published 2 studies on this subject and confirms, unsurprisingly, that we can afford to give these vulnerable workers the necessary tools and benefits to battle their disease with dignity and get back to their jobs and maintain their jobs. That's very important. There are employers who have stated that the increase in dues would be reasonable in order to offer these workers what they need. They have paid into the system all their lives often, and they have a disease that temporarily prevents them from working, and they need financial support to pay for their care, their transport, etc. And they don't need financial insecurity, which the current EI program gives them with 15 weeks only. Now, you may say, and all my Liberal colleagues will say, Madame de Bellefeuille, in the budget, the government promised to increase this to 26 weeks. Well, we know 26 weeks is not enough. The data makes that clear. 26 weeks by 2022. Well, I'm thinking of people. I'm asking you to close your eyes and think of the people who are finishing their 15th week, and they heard that perhaps it'll be 26 weeks. And I have to tell them, well, no, actually, the government didn't make this executory in the budget. They need the ways and means it won't be 26 weeks right away. They have discretion till 2022. Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that this is playing around with the emotions of people who are sick right now and want to fight this disease. You don't choose to be sick, Mr. Chairman. You don't choose what kind of disease you're going to get. We're talking about workers who have no protection, no collective bargaining, no private medical insurance. People who often worked extremely hard all their lives and who get sick. People who work at a convenience store that you've seen every day for all your life, who gets a little more than minimum wage but has no private medical insurance, get cancer, rectal cancer, 47 weeks possibly of sick leave. They only get 15 weeks, 55%.
Do you think that somebody can work on that basis with that amount? But 26 weeks, when you know that you have a very long struggle ahead of you to be able to get back on your feet and get back to work. You know, there are 400, 400 people at least every year that are cast off, abandoned by the system, and it costs them great deals of monies every day. They do need the financial support that could be offered to them by the special benefits. I agree with the workers. I am with the workers, and I've had so many calls, so many emails to encourage me to ask, to implore our Liberal colleagues to be able to deal with C-265, to add a royal recommendation. And it is me, Marie-Hélène, and myself, Marie-Hélène Dubé as well, who are asking you to do this. 15 weeks does not suffice. 26 is not even sufficient. I will be very happy to answer any questions you may have, Chair. Thank you very much, Madame de Bellefeuille. And now it's the turn of Madame Renaud. Welcome to the committee, Madame Renaud. You have the floor.
First, I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify regarding Bill C-265. I am a COVID long hauler, one of nearly 500,000 Canadians now estimated to suffer or have suffered from the debilitating long-term effects of COVID-19. My nightmare began exactly 14 months ago today, on April 15, 2020, when I started experiencing crippling health issues, including severe difficulty breathing, postural tachycardia, exercise intolerance, post-exertional malaise, and profound fatigue. Little did I know the life-altering illness that would relentlessly plague me for the next 14 months and counting was only the beginning of a much bigger struggle. After 2 months of fighting the disease, my condition deteriorated to the point where I became completely bedridden for 6 weeks. Yes, at times, I wholeheartedly believed that I would suffocate to death in my own bed. But no longer being able to work was no reason for me to worry. I was able to focus on healing because I had disability insurance coverage through my employer. As expected, I received short-term disability benefits for the first 16 weeks of my leave, during which I had 2 failed attempts at returning to work. Despite that, my long-term disability claim was subsequently denied. That's when I applied for employment insurance sickness benefits. With my health not improving, I strongly suspected that 15 weeks worth of benefits might not be enough to support me until I was able to return to work or until the lawsuit I filed against my insurance company got settled. I would soon be left with no income whatsoever. I would soon be left having to sell my house to survive. I understand that for some people, a house is just a house, but for me, it is by far my most important asset. One I have acquired through a lifetime of hard work, dedication, and sacrifices. In an effort to raise elected officials' awareness about my financial struggles, my upcoming loss, and the grim reality faced by other COVID long haulers across this country, I shared my story in the media earlier this year, to no avail. The new owners took possession of my dream home 3.5 weeks ago. What would 50 weeks worth of EI sickness benefits have meant to me? Well, I would be testifying from my dream home office right now. Sure, it would have been less than the income I should have received from my insurance company, but enough to allow me to keep my house, to keep it until I was able to successfully return to work, or until my lawsuit got settled, or until the pandemic was sufficiently under control for me to safely rent out bedrooms in my house to make ends meet. It would have made all the difference. Since the vast majority of Canadians do not have disability insurance coverage, for many long COVID sufferers, the financial problems have already been piling up for well over a year. Like myself, they are having to exhaust their savings, cash in their RRSPs, sell their cars, homes, and other assets to survive. In a country like Canada, that is simply not acceptable. While new government support programs have been created and others adapted to assist people whose revenue sources have been negatively impacted by the pandemic, COVID long haulers have not only been ignored, but discriminated against by not being made eligible to any of these programs. So let me ask you this. Why is it that in the true north, strong and free, a 1.5 years into a global pandemic, people who are sick are the only ones being left without the additional financial support they need to survive? I have financially contributed to this country for more than 32 years now, and I should never have lost my house because I fell ill. No Canadian should ever have to experience that. You may not realize this, but by choosing to extend EI sickness benefits from 15 weeks to 50, you are providing sick and vulnerable Canadians with a lot more than just financial support. You are giving them peace of mind, the opportunity to start focusing on what matters most, recovering their health. You are gifting them with a fighting chance to heal so they can return to their lives and to being contributing citizens. When it comes to EI sickness benefits, Canada can and must do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Renault. Next, Marie-Hélène Dubé. À vous la parole.
You have the floor. Unfortunately, your microphone is muted, Madame. Oh, I apologize. I'll start again. Hello to everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be with you. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm also very happy to hear Madame Renault, the previous witness. She is dealing with an aspect that I have spoken of very often. I will just like to remind you of my own personal history. I have gone through 3 years of cancer in 5 years. In 2009, I started a campaign and amassed some 620,000 signatures from more than 33 projects. And I've been able to contact many policymakers and so on. I'm very proud to say that there are politicians like Madame de Bellefeuille who work very, very hard on issues like this. But at the same time, I find it almost unbelievable that I've had to deal with this since 2009. The Liberals have been in power now, and they are the ones that have been in favor of moving the number of weeks up to 50. And although I've worked on this since 2011, unfortunately their position changed when they came to power. Perhaps I'm not expressing myself well, but these 50 weeks were always a possibility, and the experts say that they're a possibility, and yet here we are still being offered 26 weeks. I had a meeting with Mr. Trudeau and Madame Qualtrough in 2019. They indicated very clearly to me that it would not be 26 weeks, although that's inadequate. They said that there was a possibility, though. There was a possibility for people who go beyond the number of weeks. So there are some 80% of these people that need at the very least 41 weeks. So it has taken 50 years for us to succeed in having the possibility of improving our situation. We're paying into something, but once again, when we ask for even 26 weeks, people are taken aback. And there are many who have to live in poverty. Long COVID is an emerging problem. There are long haulers. And I know that there's a high percentage of people who feel that they are diminished in a way after COVID. It's not possible to always function on a temporary program basis. This is a problem that illustrates very clearly that there has to be a will to do something. I know people who have lost everything, their houses, their cars, their investments, because of the few weeks. They lack the few weeks to be able to receive EI benefits. We are the only G7 country that offers less than a year of benefits. All the others offer at least 1 year or 3 years. And when you look at that, you look at Australia that offers 2, the Netherlands 2, South Africa at least 52 weeks, Hungary 1 year. I don't understand why Canada is not embarrassed when they see what they are offering people. What is so different here? There is something that I heard as well recently in respect of the budget. People say that, but if we increase that to more than 26 weeks, people are going to take a lot more holidays and they won't even come to work. Listen. There have been many studies on this. Okay, so where are these studies that you say have been made? Who did them? With all these other countries on the planet that enact measures that help the people in their system with the 15 weeks that we have now, it's 9.8 weeks on average that most people take. So I would point out that first of all, it is, and above all, it is the doctor that signs off on this, that allots this. I don't see why you think that after a certain number of weeks that is higher, or even 50 weeks, you think people would not be able to come back to work. They might think, oh, well, I'm wealthy now, why work? No. There are consequences to this lack of action, consequences for people in general, consequences for me in particular. I want to go back to work, not just for money, but also for the sake of dignity, for being an active participant in the workforce. I want to draw your attention to this. We don't speak of it often enough. There are a lot of people that have to fall back on social welfare programs. There are gaps that exist everywhere. And there are people that want to get out of that cycle, and they want to be able to get back to work. You can see the table in my brief that I submitted to you, that there are families that want to get back to work. You have over thousands of families now living in poverty. So what will that cost? For different programs, health programs, for example, all the problems that will ensue from this. And there are a whole bunch of people that don't pay taxes, don't pay income tax, and there is such a huge gap between the people. In terms of the health system, there is socioeconomic inequality in terms of the annual direct burden that is borne by people, $6 billion on an annual basis. This is a wheel that keeps repeating itself, a cycle that repeats itself. Nobody wins when it's like this. I want to be able to prove that you can do something about it. Statistics show that you can do something about it, so I certainly don't understand the situation that we have now with the Liberals in power, but although they have the opportunity to put something incredible in place that would be perfectly adapted to the 21st century, it's not there yet. It's sad. Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank you for your attention. Thank you, Madame Dubé. You'll have more time in the questions. Thank you.
Next, from the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Keldorfer, and I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations for the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada. I'm also one of the 90,000 Canadians who live in Canada, a country with one of the highest rates of MS in the world. I'm pleased to present to your committee on Bill C-265, an act to amend the Employment Insurance Act, illness, injury, or quarantine, and illustrate the important perspective of Canadians living with MS. Today's trying times resemble what it's like to live with MS every single day. Every day, people with MS wake up to adversity and do everything in their power to persevere. The woman with progressive MS who struggles to button her shirt in the morning, yet is determined to dance at her granddaughter's wedding. The high school athlete who ignores the tingling and numbness in his legs to rally his team to victory. The lawyer with blurred vision and foggy thoughts. The father struggling to say his child's name. The avid cyclist feeling her balance go. Canada has one of the highest rates of MS in the world. Canadians know that MS can be harsh, unfair, overwhelming, a disease that always takes away, never gives back, and always threatens to take again. MS impacts all Canadians, not only affected individuals, but also their families. Let me start with a story. Imagine this for a moment, a 29-year-old university graduate, wife and mother to a 1-year-old son, starting out her career in the nonprofit sector. She walks into her doctor's office one day and walks out not knowing the journey that lies before her. Why? Because she had just been diagnosed with MS. That woman was me 17 years ago. How would you react if you were told that you have an unpredictable, often disabling disease of the central nervous system affecting your brain and spinal cord, and they can't say what lies ahead? They tell you you're one of 12 diagnosed with MS every day, and that it happens to women 3 times more than men. The problem is that no one can tell you what, when, and how severe the symptoms like I have experienced, like fatigue, pain, numbness, spasms, tremors, vertigo, weakness, to name a few. They can't tell you where they'll happen. It depends on what part of the brain and spinal cord are affected. And this can vary so greatly from person to person and from time to time in the same person. I left the doctor's office that day, went into my car, called my husband and cried, and told him whatever happens, I don't want to live in long-term care. Why was that my reaction? Because that is what I knew of MS at that time. My aunt had passed away when she was in her 50s with a progressive form of the disease. She could no longer move on her own and speak except for the nod of her head. She lived in long-term care facility with individuals 2 and 3 decades older than her. And I was scared that was going to be me. I didn't realize that there were others living with this disease that didn't have the progressive form like my aunt. They had what I'd been diagnosed with, relapsing remitting MS. This type of MS is characterized by unpredictable but clearly defined relapses, during which new symptoms appear or existing ones get worse. In the period between relapses, recovery is complete or nearly complete to pre-relapse function, remission. 85% of people diagnosed with MS have this type, also referred to as an episodic disability. When I was diagnosed, I worried about our family's financial security. My son was just a year old when I was diagnosed. We were just starting out. We had a mortgage, car payments, student loans, and other expenses. What would happen if I had a relapse and couldn't work full-time and needed to work part-time while recovering? Were there financial supports that could help me? What I learned and continue to learn more about every day, however, is that the current disability income and employment support programs were not designed with episodic disability in mind. Many support programs in Canada are designed to support persons with disabilities that are built with a binary switch. Either you can work or you cannot work. Many people with episodic disabilities. Employment is a key factor in maintaining adequate income and reducing poverty. Research shows that people with MS have disproportionately high employment rates given their educational and vocational histories. Yet many people living with MS who want to work struggle to do so. Often the problem is one of flexibility, accommodation, and a lack of understanding of episodic disability. It is critical we move past the notion of work as a binary switch. You can work, no assistance, versus you can't work, assistance. With more than 60% of people living with MS eventually reaching unemployment, it's clear that more needs to be done to support those who live with episodic disabilities. Unfortunately, the EI sickness benefit designed to address these very issues have been virtually unchanged since the 1970s. To put this into context, it was set up at a time when smoking on planes was legal, bell bottoms were king, and universal Medicare was just getting on its feet. The program provides insured employees up to 15 weeks of financial assistance if they can't work for medical reasons, provided they've qualified with over 600 hours already worked. While it is an important safety net, it also has outdated design flaws, most notably that rigid on or off switch that doesn't work for those who need a gradual workforce reintegration or those that live with episodic disabilities. For the 13 million Canadians identified as not having short-term disability insurance, in a 2015 report from the Institute for Research on Public Policy called Leaving Some Behind, What Happens When Workers Get Sick, this means that at the end of 15 weeks, they can either be recovered or receive nothing. The 2019 EI Roundtable report noted that 3 of the 4 major parties recognized in their 28 platforms that it's time to extend the benefit from 15 weeks to more. We were so pleased to see the inclusion of this extension of EI sickness benefits in the 2020 budget and look at more Canadians supported by this benefit. This committee in 2019 had a report called the HUMA Committee Report on Episodic Disabilities, which was the last time I was before this committee as a witness. It stated explicitly that the Employment and Social Development Canada should take these important steps to better support people with episodic disabilities. Having MS creates a life of uncertainty and unpredictability, but what should and can be certain and predictable are the supports people with MS and episodic disabilities have. Now, in 2021, with the impacts of the pandemic ravaging our economy and the livelihoods of Canadians, the time for action has come. The MS Society, on behalf of Canadians who live with MS and the tens of thousands more who are part of our MS community, asks this committee to support the extension of the employment insurance sickness benefit. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Uh,
Inaudible.
Briefly is suspended. Fasson to deliver his opening remarks.
Bonjour à vous tous. J'espère que vous pouvez m'entendre. On a fait des vérifications sonores. On m'indique que ce n'est pas parfait, mais j'espère que je vais réussir à passer l'information le plus possible. Les gens sont attentifs, donc j'ai l'impression que vous m'entendez.
I guess that you can hear me. So, my name is Louis Fasson. Is that okay? I just wanted confirmation that you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for welcoming me here today. This is a privilege to have been invited to present this speech. I was certainly not prepared for this event, but life circumstances, my promise to my daughter Emilie, and my desire to represent my will, my motivation, explains my presence. And it's in memory of my daughter that I do this. I'm the father of Emilie Fasson, who at 29 years old was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, stage 3. She needed 2 medical interventions at first because of the severity of the disease. First, she had to put an end to her new pregnancy, and then she had to have major surgery. She could certainly not go back to work. So she applied to get sickness EI. She was told she would only get 15 weeks to get better. So she got 11 weeks fewer than a caregiver who could be with her for 26 weeks. And yet her specialist had indicated that her chemo protocol would last 38 weeks at a minimum. This is an absurd, unrealistic situation. Emilie tried to get more weeks of benefits. She had phone calls and meetings. These 15 weeks went by, and despite that fatigue, she was confident that she could get through this, and she was facing a financial sinkhole. She decided to go back to work to accumulate the necessary hours. But she and I tried to approach our Member of Parliament, Minister Jean-Yves Duclos. He was very sad and he understood, but we got no position expressed by him. He told us he would work to improve the situation and that EI was particularly difficult to manage given all its programs. We got a private audience with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Minister Carla Qualtrough. In my presence, Emilie and I got Mr. Trudeau's commitment to do better than 26 weeks. Mr. Trudeau told me that the minority government was probably going to propose more than 26 weeks, and he understood the situation. But we didn't get any more information at the time to figure out what he was thinking. So without having been able to accumulate the sufficient number of hours, Emilie was told that she was facing an even worse medical situation. She continued to try to change public opinion. She went on TV, she did interviews in the newspapers. She wanted this to go from 15 to 50 weeks. But 50 weeks is not a gift. There will be medical follow-up. Once you're better, you can go back to work. And many others have said so. We don't want 55%. We want to go back to work and get our dignity back through work and be an example for our children. It's not Club Med for 50 weeks. This is a maximum of 50 weeks. If it's 34, you go back to work after 34 weeks, and you don't have the stress of saying that between 15 or 26 weeks and 34 weeks, what am I going to do? So, not having access to sick leave, her friends and family organized dinners and GoFundMe, and we tried to support this family with 2 children aged 3 and 7. It's ridiculous that in Canada, Emilie had to beg and ask for charity, since that's exactly what we're talking about here in Canada. We're asking for charity.
Well, she didn't pay 26 years. She died at 31, so she couldn't pay into the EI fund for 26 years. She should have had some financial help, though. In the pandemic, there have been exceptional measures that have been offered to millions of people, and that's okay. And there are thousands upon thousands of people who are sick in Canada, we know now, that were not eligible for CERB. And their ability to work interfered. Their inability to work interfered. I'm very surprised that when I hear from the government that the government, when it said that it wouldn't let any single Canadian down, that the government was there for them, were they there for the people who were sick? And therefore, is it still Canadian? In view of the fact that there are consequences to the virus on the short and long term, we have to think about this. If somebody is diagnosed with cancer and since the hospitals are less able to take somebody in immediately, just imagine what happens. The cancer progresses. It gets worse. And the treatment might start at the 11th week of the EI sickness benefit. So this is something that is regrettable. And my daughter died at the age of 31 years. And there was nothing announced in the budget that this sickness benefit would go beyond 26 weeks. So you can guess what the feeling of disappointment would have been and is. Mr. Trudeau announced in his budget that the government would have 26 weeks of sickness benefit. And now a second reading of C-256, which is sponsored by Madame de Bellefeuille, that spoke earlier, is an important step. There was a majority vote in the House to promote this bill. That 50 weeks, the studies say, would be possible, but nothing has ensued from this. In light of the fact that there are looming elections, what will change? The structure of the government? My impression is that very little will change. And those people who have colon cancer, which is one of the most significant and most often diagnosed cancers in Canada, it should be moved from 26 to 50 weeks. But the 26 weeks that maybe one day, someday, we will actually get will be there. There has been a poll that was conducted by, Ipsos Reid, I believe, that said that 84% of Canadians are in agreement that 50 weeks should be the number of weeks available. It's just logical. Don't forget that no worker asks to get sick. No person asks to get sick. You pay in all your life, and then when you need it, you are refused access. They need something to help face down their illness, their disease. 26 weeks, all right. But today I am asking you to consider something else, the determining factors that the bill indicates up to 50 weeks. But there is the dimension of humanity that should be demonstrated to workers who are truly discriminated against. Madame Dubé has spoken to this, and she has talked about the fact that statistics should be managed evenly in a good way that would lead us to new measures. But there are problems, technological problems. We are not organizing demonstrations. Our efforts are directed towards a quick return to work. In the UK, and one of the G7 countries, it knows that it is that is its role. Some 420,000 rather Canadians have signed up for the sickness benefit, and 2/3 of them, though, will not benefit from adequate benefits. Think about it. You have to think about the situation that is happening here. In the greater region of Quebec City, about 12,000 workers have 26 weeks, and they need extra financial support, rather. We need an approach where you, as elected representatives, should be sensitive to the need for dignity that these people have. This is what is needed. This is what I promised. And this is what I'm seeking for my daughter. I'm ready to answer any question you may have. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Mr. Sansfaçon. We're going...
Starting with Ms. Doncho, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you sincerely to the witnesses for your testimony. It was very moving, and félicitations, Madame de Bellefeuille.
Congratulations, Madame de Bellefeuille.
Accomplishment in bringing it this forward. It's a lot of hard work to get it to this stage, and I just wanted to sincerely congratulate you for that hard work and the difference this could make for thousands of Canadians, as we've heard in testimony today. Mr. Saint-Fasson, in particular, I was extremely moved by your testimony and hearing that you're here on behalf of your daughter, Emily Saint-Fasson, who was the same age as me when she passed away this past fall from cancer. And of course, Madame de Bellefeuille honored your daughter by naming this bill after her, and her valiant effort to gain the attention of the Prime Minister and his Liberal government, which is an extraordinary accomplishment in someone so young. And I just really wanted to express my heartfelt sorrow for her passing, and thank you for being here on her behalf. It makes me a bit emotional even to think about it as a father, what you're doing for her and her memory. So thank you again. I did want to ask you about just the progress that has been made, or lack thereof, by the Liberal government on this. We know, as you mentioned in your testimony and others mentioned, there was a motion adopted in the House of Commons in February 2020 to bring sickness benefits to 50 weeks. It was supported by all parties, and yet here we are over a year later, and no progress on that. We know the Liberals have promised 26 weeks, half the time that your daughter was advocating for, and Mary-Helene and Julie and the other witnesses here. But even if that passes, it won't come into force until next summer, 2022. So I just wanted to hear your comments on your thoughts on the progress or lack thereof thus far by the Liberal government on this. To Mr. Saint-Fasson, s'il vous plaît.
Well, I see no advantage here in terms of what has happened up to today. There are just generalized answers that are given to us. In Île-de-la-Madeleine, in Quebec, people were hoping for more weeks, but given the fact that there was these delays in being treated in hospital because of COVID, it was particularly difficult. I spoke to Ms. Quattro about this. They said, well, you're going to get 26 weeks. Well, 26 weeks, if you don't have 26 weeks today, eventually you're going to have 26 weeks, it appears. I don't know if that's going to change things for the members of Parliament, the members of the Liberal Party, if they're going to wait for this. But the 26 weeks that are being promised for someone who eventually, for someone who has cancer, is meaningless for someone who has cancer today and is only entitled to 15 weeks. So we know what Canadians are living through, and I think you have to do better and be careful.
Yes, thank you for that. And I know in this past March, the committee had the opportunity to actually implement the member, Mr. Blakey, was here with us, and he brought forward an amendment for 50 weeks in a Liberal piece of legislation for this CRB extension. And the Conservatives were very supportive of that, as of course were the NDP who brought it forward. The Liberals were not. And also later, the Liberals in the House of Commons said that they, were not keen to provide a royal recommendation to Madame de Bellefeuille's bill, which is needed in order to make this bill law. So I was quite discouraged by that, as I know many members were. But I think it shows that there is a lot of commitment from across party lines to make this happen. So I think that is encouraging, but although not nearly fast enough, particularly for all the witnesses on this committee who have suffered through 15 measly weeks of sickness when you're battling MS or cancer. I know Mary-Helene Dubé, you've battled cancer 3 times in about 5 years, I thought you said. So it is clearly urgent, and we know COVID long haulers. Another one of our witnesses, Madame Renaud, has outlined her experience there. So we know it is urgent. One thing I did want to get your perspective on is at the recent Conservative Policy Convention, a resolution was overwhelmingly supported for 52 weeks of sickness benefits. So very close to what Madame de Bellefeuille is putting forward, but 2 extra weeks. Just would love to get your thoughts, Mr. Saint-Fasson and Madame Dubé, and also Madame Klendorfer, pardon me if I mispronounced your name, if you would be supportive of the Conservative policy for 52 weeks of sickness benefits. Go ahead, Mr. Saint-Fasson.
Bah, de toute évidence,
Clearly, when you talk about 50 weeks, it's pretty close to the 52 weeks. You could move the line along a little further. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the situation, but the first part of it, the first word is 50, and whether it's 50 or 52, I think that that would be extraordinary support, a great improvement to what we are living every day here. I mean, we're talking about quality of life, that people are not able to go back to work. This is what you have to understand. I would have liked my daughter to have had 41 weeks. 52 weeks is great. 50 weeks is fine. We have to progress.
That's your time.
Thank you. I think that's all the time I have. Thank you very much to the
Yep.
witnesses.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Doncho. Next, Mr. Long, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues, and thank you so much to the witnesses and the presentations. Like MP Dancho said, they're moving. They really leave me. It's rare, but they leave me speechless to some of the testimony I heard. Just a few facts for record. I mean, obviously we know this, but 9 out of 10 Canadians, or 8.2 out of 10, 8.2 out of 10 certainly support increased benefits. We know that whether it's breast cancer or colon cancer treatments, 26 to 37 weeks. Here in my constituency office, we deal regularly with people coming in that obviously qualify for the 15 weeks. And then, we go back and say, well, you can combine, the 15 weeks with the 45 weeks and get a maximum of 50 weeks. Well, obviously we know, and, per testimony, which confirms what we all know, is that, well, you have to be eligible for work. And certainly I read an article that was in the Calgary Sun here recently. It was a gentleman, I think his name was Scott Reason. He was a COVID long hauler that, can't work. Obviously qualified for the 15 weeks. His company is keeping his position for him in the hope that he would come back to work, but he's not able to come back to work. So thus he doesn't qualify for the benefit. So, I want to start, I think, with you, Ms. Renaud. Your situation, your testimony is extremely compelling. And, when I read the Calgary Sun article with respect to Mr. Reason, and then I listened to your testimony, can you just elaborate more, the process that you went through and, how you, obviously, like you said, you'd like to be giving your presentation from your home, which you couldn't stay in because of this. Can you just elaborate a little more for the committee about your experience?
Yes, I got very sick with COVID in April 2020, and I'm one of the few lucky Canadians who actually have disability insurance. I was able to rely on them for the first 16 weeks of my leave, like I mentioned. It was the short-term disability period. And during that time, there was a few weeks where I felt better, and I did try to go back to work unsuccessfully, because as you know, long COVID often comes with waves of symptoms. So you get better for a little while, then it gets worse again.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to stay at work, and despite that, my long-term disability claim was denied. So thankfully I had some savings that I could rely on for a little while. In my case, I may have been, one of the rare people who, my husband also got sick with long COVID, so we were both unable to work. So we were able to apply for the sickness benefits, but 15 weeks with an illness like long COVID, where most people are sick for over a year, it wasn't enough for us. And I made a choice not to get to the point where I would have to cash in my RRSPs and I wanted to keep that because that was meant for retirement and I'm going to need it in retirement. So I decided to sell my home, which was a very difficult decision. But it was the decision that I was forced to make because after I got done with the short-term disability insurance and the 15 weeks worth of sick EI benefits, I had nothing else coming in. I've been without income now for many months.
Okay, I certainly understand that, and I thank you for that. Ms. Kellendorfer, thank you again for your presentation. And I just wanted to kind of run it by you with respect to like the 50 weeks. Are there certain categories of workers that would most be impacted by the extension? Is there any particular category of worker you think that would benefit more from this?
Well, it's interesting because I think the MS Society over the last few years have really looked at the extension piece and
yes.
and worked with a lot of different organizations, Canadian Cancer Society being one, the Canadian Labour Congress, and others, employers included, and roundtables. Back in 2015, we worked with the Institute for Research on Public Policy, and it really was a look at the entire span of leave when people are sick. And they noted that, at any time, 6% of our working population has illness or sickness. And we really aren't supported as a population, a Canadian population of workers, to have the supports to remain attached to the workforce. And I think that's a really big issue. And EI is a piece of an entire suite of benefits and support programs that need to be better coordinated. And I think that was one of the pieces around this report and other reports that have come along. We have participated with the Conference Board of Canada on a couple of particularly regarding MS in the workplace. People with episodic disabilities and diseases like cancer. And interesting, I think COVID long haul is an interesting one, new to our discussions, but have a lot of the resemblances of episodic disabilities, like the waves Chantal was speaking of. I've experienced that too with MS, and others have too. And so I do think it is old, right? And it needs to be updated to address the current realities of our workplace and the situation for Canadians who get illness.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kellendorfer. And thank you, Mr. Long. Suite Madame Chabot pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Chabot for 6 minutes, please. Okay, is the sound all right? Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Okay, thank you. I wish to greet my colleagues, Ms. de Bellefeuille, who proudly put forth this bill, our witnesses who came to testify with great emotion, Mr. Sansfaçon, especially given what he went through and his support for this ongoing problem, and Ms. Dubé as well, and other ladies, all the witnesses. In response to the last question put by my Liberal colleague, what could 26 weeks do? I'd say between 15 and 26 weeks. Of course, one can't say there wouldn't be some small improvement. Madame de Bellefeuille, let me ask you this. With 26 weeks, who are we missing and why? And after 50 years, 13 bills, one motion adopted by the majority in the House, one bill adopted by the majority of the House. What more can we do to give momentum to this so that the Liberal government can, with great fairness in the 21st century, admit that 50 weeks are needed to meet the needs of people? Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Chabot. We have a good illustration of this afternoon. You heard testimony from 4 people who didn't have enough with the 15 weeks. So that means that we could hear people all year, people who didn't have enough with 15 weeks, and most of them wouldn't have had enough with 26 weeks either because they had a disease that required more than 26 weeks of sick leave. You understand, 150,000 Canadians are being abandoned each year because the government refuses to amend the number of weeks. We all agree that 15 weeks is simply not enough. 26 weeks is something we think we have, but we don't. It will only be there once the government decides to enshrine that. We may have an election, months will pass, and there are people who, as we speak, are finishing their 15th week today. We have a privilege here, an opportunity to help these vulnerable abandoned workers today with a government commitment saying that we're not changing the EI Act every week here. It hasn't been touched for 40 years. And here we're proposing an amendment that meets the new needs of workers. We need to modernize the special sick leave benefit to better help these workers. We can't understand why the government is being so insensitive to this because this is well documented. When I listen to Mr. Long, I feel like telling him, you know full well that 26 weeks is not enough for a very large number of sick workers. As Mr. Saint-Fasson said, we're not asking that all sick workers get 50 weeks. We're talking about those who unfortunately need more than 15 or 26 weeks, and that they can get the support they need to recover and get back to work. You know, we're in politics. We adopt all kinds of bills that are not really in keeping with people's reality. They don't resonate with people. Medicare and EI sick benefits do resonate. People do understand. And I'm really sad, Ms. Chabot, to see this resistance, a political resistance that cannot be understood by most Canadians and Quebecers because it makes so much sense and is so well documented. Thank you. Now, Mr. Saint-Fasson, when we hear testimony and when we hear about Émilie, whom we met because we were present during the meeting with the Minister of Employment and the Prime Minister, there's an opportunity there. Do you agree here that there's an opportunity here to act? And there's something rational about all this. It's rational because we're talking about workers who pay EI premiums. We're talking about workers who have no private or complementary insurance. So it's for those people we're asking for action. What difference would this have made for Émilie if she'd gotten 50 weeks? Well, Émilie was part of the group of workers who were starting out. She was an administrative assistant who did accounting. She didn't have any social safety net. She thought that EI would help and bring her up to 42 weeks if she lost her job. If we did a Vox Populi, I'm wondering how many people think that they will only get 15 weeks if they get sick. How many people know that? For Émilie, the opportunity to get 50 weeks would have allowed her to avoid forcing medicine and imposing work on herself before the time came. We don't know if it harmed her. I was diagnosed with cancer, bone cancer, a few years ago, and the attitude toward disease is important. I mean, he believed in that too. But when you have to manage your child, your expenses, your finances, there are all kinds of things that happen in addition to what's unknown. The only thing you do know is that you'll get 15 weeks of benefits, only 15 weeks. If somebody knew, starting from today, that they have a 50-week horizon, I'm convinced that when it comes to the attitude toward the family, toward the disease, it would be extremely beneficial. It would cure you, but it would help you get back to work. As a former employer, I'd rather have somebody who took 26, 34 weeks and then comes back to work in good shape than come back after 16 weeks and pretend they're okay. That's not productive and it's not good for the person. Thank you very much, Mr. Sansfaçon. Ms. Chabot? Now we'll go to Mr. Blakey.
Very much, and I do just want to start by saying a big thank you to all of our witnesses hearing today to discuss an important issue, to be sure, but also to share stories that are deeply personal. And I know that's not always easy to share in a public forum like this. So I thank you for having the courage to do that. And I know many Canadians who aren't here today will benefit for your willingness to share those stories. Along that vein, Ms. Renaud, I understand, I think you may be one of the first people ever with long COVID to be testifying before a parliamentary committee. And I know you had talked a little bit about being able to avail yourself of a short-term disability plan, but not a long-term disability plan. I know that there are insurance companies that, aren't recognizing long COVID to the extent that they should, or in some cases at all. And that even in the case where some companies are recognizing it, it can be difficult to get a diagnosis, particularly in part because Canada doesn't understand a lot about this condition. I mean, the world, Canada is behind respect to many other countries in terms of the work being done on this. But for those who got COVID and then have been subject to long COVID, if they got COVID before the testing regime was in place, a lot of them weren't able to get a positive diagnosis simply because the testing infrastructure didn't exist yet. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to your own experience and experience of other COVID long haulers that who have struggled to gain access to employer insurance plans.
For me, I mean, yes, I like I was saying earlier, I was lucky to have the disability insurance. But yeah, there seems to be a problem with the long-term disability claims. I certainly am not the only one whose long-term disability claim has been denied by disability insurance companies. In my particular case, and I know it is the case with a lot of other long haulers, is we do a lot of different medical tests, but everything comes back normal. So on paper, we look like there's nothing wrong with us, when in reality, we're completely debilitated and, often bedridden or really unable to work, most of us. So it's, and from the statistics I've seen, only 20% of Canadians have disability insurance, which means that a large majority of the population doesn't have access to that. And I mean, some of those people get very ill as well. It's not just COVID long haulers, it's all the people that get sick. And especially if they don't have access to disability insurance, they need to be able to rely on more than 15 weeks of financial support. I mean, it's 15 weeks is so quick. I mean, especially with the healthcare system right now, I mean, it's so overloaded. I have to wait for months for one medical test, and I've already done a few, but I'm still waiting to do more because there's like a backlog there. So yeah, I mean, it's crucial. It's vital that this be addressed and that there's something that be done about it that as soon as possible.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Renault, for that testimony. Je veux demander maintenant une question.
I'd like now to ask a question of Madame Dubé. A month or two ago here in the committee, we were dealing with the bill 525, and I tried to move an amendment to have Canada, after a period of 50 weeks, for the sickness benefit. And the Liberals very vigorously at that time said that the NDP didn't understand the software. It would be very difficult to make changes to the software that managed the EI system. And they did not, therefore, support my amendment to have a royal recommendation attached to the amendment to the bill. But in C30, they spoke to the possibility, and in fact, the change of the period of weeks, 26 weeks, but that won't come in until 2022 in the future. So why do you think that the reason that they opposed my amendment, saying that it was difficult to make changes to the software, but now they've committed to making a change that will involve changing the software at some point? Why are they sticking to 26 weeks? It could be 55 weeks. Similar arguments could be made because is there more effort involved in changing the payment system in terms of the number of weeks? That's a very good question. From the time that you make a change, you do have to tinker with the system. So whether it's 26, 40, or 50 weeks, I think that's not the issue at all. You have to, they seem to be going slowly just in case there is a problem, and they're making all kinds of tests, they're conducting them, and for some time now they've been saying, okay, we're hearing all kinds of figures, 35, 37 weeks, 25 weeks. These figures are statistics for the duration of treatment. If I have a 35-week treatment, do you think that the next week or the next day I would be fit enough to return to work? No. There is this leeway that has to be there in the figures. And also, with the pandemic, we've seen that they can move quickly and simplify legislation, and that was okay that they did that. But it's clear there has to be a solution to this problem. This is not a technological problem. This is an issue of will.
And next, we're going to go to Ms. Falk, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank all of our witnesses and our panelists for their contribution to this. And not only that, but being willing to be raw and real, sharing emotional stories. So I just want to thank you all for that. I have had the pleasure of being on this committee since I was first elected. As I was on this committee with Mr. Long and Mr. Vaughan. And in that time, there has been a number of studies and reports done in relating to employment insurance. And we have heard repeated testimony about the limitations of the EI program and during the pandemic. We experienced the employment insurance programs limits on a larger scale with COVID. And we know that because we have heard testimony on that today. The concern about the 15-week cap on employment insurance sickness benefits has been raised on a number of occasions in this committee. And has in the past, this committee in the past has recommended its extension in studies like the report on episodic disabilities. So it's a very frustrating point for me, since being a member of this committee and being an elected official, having reports come from this committee and having the government not act on those recommendations that the committee has recommended to the government. We know that when someone is ill, EI sickness benefits should help alleviate the burden and the worry of income security, allowing them to focus on recovery. Knowing that after one's recovery, they are able to go back to their job is also a concern that many have. If that worry is alleviated, it would also help someone focus on their recovery, which would help them heal quicker. In this committee study on episodic disabilities, and I'd like to thank Ms. Kellendorfer for your contributions to that study, we had heard repeatedly about the value of continued labor force attachment. So I'm just wondering, Ms. Kellendorfer, if you would agree that the labor force attachment should be a consideration in the structure of the EI program. And if you do, and if so, do you think that the proposed extension of sickness benefits will help more Canadians remain connected to the workforce?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for highlighting that very important report of this committee around episodic disabilities. It was I think 20 years in the making when it came into the HUMA committee, and many of the conditions and diseases that are considered episodic, including cancer, mental health, have all been, I'd say, amplified during COVID. And so I think the recommendations in that report are needed now more than ever. I think the labor force attachment consideration is key. People want to work, but they struggle to work. And so how can we as a society ensure that they can remain connected to their workplace for as long as possible? And so we'd be supportive of anything that would support that. And I think there's, in the discussion around employment insurance, there's lots of other pieces around the sickness benefit. The extension is a piece, but I think there's other pieces, including the increase in the benefit, because I think it's not just the extension, which is very important, but there are other pieces that will be supportive of maintaining that workforce attachment, which will help all Canadians that are able to access it. Because I think there's also access pieces. And if I can make just two more points, because I think there's also a piece around women, and women have been disproportionately affected by COVID, and they also are disproportionately affected in terms of accessing the EI sickness benefit from the get-go because of their precarious and part-time and different labor force attachment, for sure. And I would just say the other piece that Ms. Renaud spoke about, the short-term to long-term disability, that has been an ongoing issue for many years for many different diseases. And I think that's a piece that I'd surely like to see change. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kellendorfer. I'm just wondering, what are some of the benefits that someone would experience who would have the opportunity for that labor force attachment?
Very briefly, please. We're out of time.
Okay, yeah. So I would just say that work provides a number of important considerations for people with MS, for example. Being able to work makes them be able to continue with their benefits in terms of their disease-modifying therapies, which actually have shown in study after study to reduce disability. And of course, reducing disability would benefit all for sure. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falk and Ms. Kellendorfer. The last couple of questions will be posed by Mr. Dong, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be splitting my time with MP Vaughn. To all the panelists, I want to thank you very much for sharing your story. I remember in 2005, a close family member was diagnosed with third-stage colon cancer. And, the financial anxiety came along with that diagnosis was definitely, troubling to our entire family. And, I remember the struggle of looking at different government programs and see what will be there to support. So I fully appreciate the experience that you are sharing with us today. I see 26 weeks is a step forward. So to Madame Dubel-Belfair, I want to thank you for your leadership on this. But I am pretty confident that it is going to be the reality. Ms. Renaud mentioned that the difficulties of accessing long-term disability support. I want to ask all panelists that how do you see other long-term disability support, such as CPP disability benefit, complementing an extension of as an extension of the EI sickness benefit? The question is open to any one of the panelists. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I could answer this starting first. I think there's multiple benefit programs that could be better coordinated with EI sickness benefits, from provincial and territorial programs to the program that you spoke of, the Canada Disability or Canada Pension Disability Benefit. You know, one of the things that people with MS have is once they're on it, it's very hard to kind of go in and out of the system. With a disease like MS, it's very intermittent. It's again that on and off piece, and so once a person is on a benefit, it's very difficult to kind of move back and forth. And so, you know, there's been suggestions of ideas around partial disability benefit. Mm-hmm. And so could that be a medium-term benefit that kind of builds that gap between the EI sickness benefit and the long-term disability piece? And so I think that would be an idea.
Thank you.
Mr. Dong, if you want to split your time, you're past the halfway mark, but I'll leave that up to you.
Over to MP Vaughan.
Mr. Vaughan, please.
I want to thank the witnesses who have been asked to come again and tell stories that are not easy to tell, and it certainly makes me reflect on my mother's last chapter in life, which was a 15-year battle with 3 different bouts of cancer. My parents were immigrants. They'd split up, and so there were 3 teenage kids taking care of our mother while she did and didn't work. While we tried to go to school, it was pretty intense. And one of the issues that was really hard to navigate as you're doing this work for your parents as a minor, was the issue of working while on benefit. And as one of Ms. Klendorfer could talk about the changes that have been made to allow, to restore working while on benefit, but also some of the changes around seasonal employment to try and make EI more flexible, more nimble, and take advantage of the good days so that the bad days can be weathered, and whether those have helped fortify as the changes we've made to EI sickness benefits have also kicked in.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, I think there should be acknowledgement that the changes to working while include the EI sickness benefit. Important change that has been made and is, again, supportive of keeping people attached to the workforce and being able to receive some benefit while also working. And so I think that has been, I'm not sure about the seasonal piece as much. I haven't looked into that as much, but I think that the entire concept around flexibility is key here, right? I think people have different needs and supports needed with their illness and sickness that need to be accommodated. And I think anything that we can do to create that flexibility is going to be important. But I do think, you know, we have to take into considerations the realities for different people. And so increasing that flexibility and also increasing that extension piece will be supportive of all people who are dealing with illness and sickness in this country.
And thank you, Mr. Vaughan. And thank you, Ms. Keldorfer. Colleagues, that takes us to 30 minutes before we have to sign off. We do have some committee business to tend to, so I'm sorry for truncating the period of questions for this very, very fascinating panel. But that's exactly what we have to do. So, donc, permettez-moi de remercier
So allow me to thank and congratulate Ms. de Bellefeuille, a Member of Parliament, for her leadership on this issue. And to have gotten to this stage with a private member's bill. That's greatly appreciated. Once again, congratulations. And for our witnesses, I think that I'm repeating the message that you already heard. We greatly appreciate your patience and the fact that you shared very personal stories in a public forum. We greatly appreciate that.
Of the witnesses for being with us here today. It's clear that this is something that's extremely important in your lives personally and for the people for whom you speak. It is greatly appreciated. You have touched every one of us, and we thank you so much for being with us. And as was indicated, having the courage to tell your story in the powerful way that you did. So with that, you are welcome to stay, but you're free to go. We're going to move now into committee business. Colleagues, we're going to be doing committee business in public, so there is no need to log off. And we have 4 items that I would like to cover off, and Ms. Doncho has 1. Just to ensure that we don't run out of time, Ms. Doncho, if you want to introduce the item that you had wished to bring forward, and then perhaps we can try to work through my list in the remaining 26 minutes, Ms. Doncho.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just something I'd love the committee to consider, since it doesn't look like we may not finish our senior study. And so Conservative colleagues were talking about the benefit that we may have if we can extend, or well, you'd have to actually reopen the submission because the deadline is closed. But if we can reopen and extend the submission deadline for the senior study until we complete the witness testimony. I thought it would just give a little bit more time for a little bit more seniors advocates to provide some more in-depth feedback, and we can do more fulsome study, and just would ask for the committee's consideration that we just simply reopen it and extend it until the witness testimony is done, which could be next week, or depending on how the committee goes, it could be perhaps in the fall. So just a simple request in that regard, and would appreciate the committee would agree to that.
Okay, so we have a request to extend the deadline for submission of briefs until the end of verbal witness testimony. Any discussion? Seeing none, we have agreement to extend the deadline. I believe I see agreement. Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Doncho. Just while we're on the seniors study, if we can deal with that next, we have a suggestion from the analysts that there was some testimony that we heard while we were sitting as part of the COVID committee last summer before this committee, and it has been suggested that the testimony that was given when we were doing that would be of assistance with the senior study. Is there any objection or any objection to the suggestion that testimony be received and be included as a part of the ongoing study that we're doing right now with respect to seniors? Ms. Falk, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have an objection. The only thing that I would like to make sure is that if there is maybe witnesses who came last summer that then submitted a brief this time, I would just hope that nothing would be canceled out, and what was provided last summer, and if they provide a brief this time, they could just be time marked maybe, because I do believe COVID, we all know, is evolving and always changing. Just that nothing would be nullified or canceled out. That's all that I would ask.
I think that's reasonable. Any concerns about that? So just for the sake of clarity, the proposed wording that I've been provided is as follows, that in the context of the study of the impact of COVID-19 on seniors, the evidence and documentation received by the committee during the first session of the 43rd Parliament on the study of the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic be taken into consideration by the committee in the current session, And I think based on Ms. Falk's intervention, we can add in addition to any other testimony, verbal or written, provided in the course of the current study. Is that agreeable to the committee? I believe I see agreement. Thank you. Two other items. One with respect to the report on the employment insurance program. That report will be ready to be tabled in the House on Monday. And it is my plan to do it on Monday. If that plan changes, I will let you know right away. But that's what it looks like. Question for the committee: is the committee amenable to instructing the analysts to prepare a press release on the tabling of the EI reform report? Any discussion on that? I think we have agreement. So to our analysts, you can consider yourself so instructed. And the last thing is the Centennial Flame Research Award. So we have had a discussion around the award. We have not yet adopted a motion to set a deadline for the submission of applications or to fix on the amount of the award. The discussion that we had indicated that the award, the discussion of May 27th, it was proposed that the amount be set at $6,700 and that the deadline for submissions be July 1, which now appears to be kind of tight. So open to your suggestions with respect to the Centennial Flame Award. Are we still comfortable with $6,700? And could I hear from you as to a reasonable deadline for the submission of applications?
Monsieur le Président. Mr. Chairman.
S'il vous plaît.
Je suis en... I'm here in person, so I can't raise my hand. Sorry about that. I have to wave my microphone. So $6,700 seems suitable to me. For submitting an application, you seem to be saying that July 1st would be kind of tight. What would be possible, considering it has nothing to do with the House rising? We could set it later, right? Okay, so let me continue. You can answer me later, but since I have the floor, I have a question about our work in committee. I just want to understand something about C265. When are we going to do clause-by-clause consideration? Maybe I don't understand the rules, but I thought we were doing that today. We'll discuss that immediately after this topic here about the award. But you're right, Ms. Chabot. We have to decide on that today, too.
Centennial Flame. Ms. Doncho?
My apologies. Sorry.
Did you want to interview?
Oh, it was about the Centennial Flame. Can I talk?
Yes, please.
Okay. I just want to suggest September 1st. Gives 2 months. Then we can get the word out in our communities and just not having the summer and students are out of school, and it might be a good time for them to focus on applying for scholarships and things like the Centennial Flame, and just that 2 months would be nice.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. Ms. Gazan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm okay with that. My only thing is, let's say potentially an election was called. Would that impact our ability to distribute the award if we were to wait till September?
Well, I think it's unlikely that we're going to be able to give the award until Parliament returns, which if there is no election, according to the parliamentary calendar, would be late September anyway.
Okay.
So I think the earliest we're going to be back will be mid-late September, and if an election intervenes, it could be later.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right, so do we have consensus then to set the award at $6,700 and to set the deadline for the submission of applications at September 1? Mr. Vaughn, please.
Sorry, I was just going to speak in favor of that. So I'm in favor of both those September 1st and 6,700.
Okay. Do we have consensus? I believe we do. Ms. Young, you're holding up your thumb, not your hand. Okay, good. Okay, dernière question, c'était la question posée.
Last thing was the question put by Ms. Chabot. She's quite right. Normally, there would be a 48-hour delay for submitting amendments to a bill, but that's something we can change by decision of the committee. So really, we have at least two options for clause by clause. The first is to do it this week on Thursday, and the second choice would be the following meeting next Tuesday.
If we are ready with C265 to go to clause by clause, we can adopt a motion now to do it on Thursday, if you wish, or next Tuesday. If it's your wish to continue to hear from witnesses, then we should deal with that now as well. So I'm in your hands as to how we dispense with C265.
Mr. Chairman, if we have to have a motion to have it Thursday, let's do it. There's something I don't understand. We had decided to call on witnesses until what date did we have? We heard the witnesses. I don't think we're going to have witnesses come back. So I thought the amendments was the same date. So I thought we were going to vote today. So we're not going to call back more witnesses now. That means we have not requested amendments yet? There was no amendment and we did not request them. Okay. Well, I would move that we go on to clause by clause without further witnesses on Thursday. Okay. Perfect.
And to proceed to clause by clause consideration of C265 at Thursday's meeting. Is there any discussion? Do we have unanimous consent? Do we have consensus to proceed in this fashion? Okay, excellent. So next order of business is to notify all members of all MPs who are not members of official parties of the plan of the committee. Am I missing anything?
Mr. Chair, I would just request that a deadline for the amendments be set by the committee.
Okay. And given that the tight timeline that we have, what would be a reasonable amount of time for them to be put in a proper package for us to have to consider on Thursday? Close of business tomorrow?
Yes, that'll be ideal. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Do we agree that must be circulated to members of Parliament that any proposed amendments be received by the clerk by 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow? We have agreement on that? I believe we do. Okay. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Is it the committee's wish to adjourn? I believe it is. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much, colleagues, and we'll see you on Thursday for clause by clause. Thank you.